Hello, these are the Colonial Immigration Notes, and this is what you're going to want to title it. That's your topic, and then put today's date. You can find your notes, digital notes, which is under the digital Cornell notes. It's right at the top of your classroom page. Once you get there, copy paste this template that we worked on together. Clear out everything you don't need. Get rid of all this. Get rid of all the stuff in the notes section, all the stuff in the summary section. Leave summary, leave need to knows, leave notes. And then you can start taking these notes today. Also know that I'm going to use a letter system with uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and then lowercase Roman numerals. You can use a bulleted system. Just make sure you're using the indentations to create the outline form, or you can just use the letter system that I'm using. All right, I want to acknowledge that there were native or indigenous tribes that were living in the regions where there was contact between the first English or settlers or colonists or invaders that came into the land that we now call the United States. So before the English arrive, you have Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts were the Wampanoag, and they're known for the myth of the Thanksgiving story. And that's right here. The Wampanoag are right here on the very far eastern tip of Massachusetts. And they made contact with the English that settled in Plymouth Colony. We also have the Iroquois Confederacy, a unification of 5 tribes right along Lake Erie. And this is going to play a big role when there starts to be expansion westward of Europeans moving westward. And they come in contact with this very strong confederacy, which was formed in 1550 and is believed to be the first democracy in what we now call the United States. So before the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Then we have the Powhatan Confederacy, unification of about 30 tribes right here around the Chesapeake Bay. And these are the people that made contact with the English at Jamestown. And this also starts the story of the removal of indigenous land and that greed and desire for land, and the story of treaties being broken in order to claim and grab and sometimes forcibly take that land, which would later be a role taken over by the US government. But it starts at these 3 points of contact. Okay, colonial immigration notes continued. Important dates to know. The first one is 1607, and this is Jamestown in Virginia. That's when it was the first successful English colony. In 1619, the first Africans arrived at Jamestown, and we're going to study that story as well this year. And another important date is in 1620 is when Plymouth Colony was formed in Massachusetts. Jamestown, mainly for economic reasons, was founded. You'll find Plymouth for religious freedom. You have a person pushing a rock up a hill. You have a fellow pulling on a rope here. So push-pull factors. So reasons people came to America. You can see I'm on C. I've done B and A before that. So here we go, push factors. Religious intolerance. That means that back in Great Britain, groups were not being allowed to practice their religion freely. So they came to this land they would call America. Or people were in debt. They owed money. And an opportunity to work off that debt was go to this place called America and work on a farm or work in someone's home and work off that debt. And then maybe you get free to the debt and get something for it. It's called indentured servitude. You'll find out about it. Jobs, looking for work. Work wasn't available in crowded cities back in London, for example. So getting out of there and finding a job in this place called America was enticing to some people. And forced enslaved labor. So that was another push factor, that people were being pushed out forcibly to this land that is now called America. We also have pull factors. Pull factor might be religious freedom. That was Plymouth Colony, the chance to practice religion freely. Oddly enough, they became very strict on what religion could be practiced once in the land they called America, and pushed a lot of people out because of that rigidity. The opportunity to own land. Back in Europe, if you were poor, you couldn't own land. That was for nobles and rich people. So the opportunity to own land was a big draw. And then social mobility. That means moving up the social ladder. In America, maybe if you struck it rich, you could move from being a poor person to a middle class or rich person. That didn't exist back in old Euro. Okay, the mercantile system. I'm going to describe it here first. You have the mother country, or Great Britain. It forms a colony. In that colony, you need a cheap source of labor, which initially was indentured servants and then later enslaved labor. And then raw materials were either grown like cotton, tobacco, or chopped down like lumber, or mined out of the ground. And that's sent back to the mother country. The mother country has industries or factories that change those raw materials into manufactured goods. And cleverly, they sell them back to the colony at a higher price. So the colonial people are buying it now. And it goes around and around and around, makes that mother country a lot of money. Of course, European nations all wanted to get in on this. So reasons for Britain to have colonies was this mercantile system. You can condense this in your own words, but it's an economic system where colonies were established to harvest or find and trade resources with the home country. Just like this graphic shows. You might want to find this graphic and put it in your notes somewhere. It's possible. I just found it with a quick search of mercantilism. And additionally, lowercase letter, no Roman numeral here, home country would then convert raw materials into manufactured goods and sell them back to the colonies and elsewhere to make money. So this helped the British economy greatly. It was also a solution to overpopulation. London and cities like that were getting very overpopulated, and the government couldn't support all the people, lots of poverty. So going to this place called America would help alleviate those problems. Then one colony acted as a refuge for people who owed debt, who otherwise would go to jail. Georgia, for example, was set up for that reason. So instead of paying off the debt, you would go work it off in this place called America. And then finally, Great Britain wanted to compete with Spain and France that were doing the same thing as this mercantile system. So greed was one of the primary factors pushing Europeans to come to this place called America. All right, this is a map of the first 13 colonies. And we are now on letter E, characteristics of New England, middle, and southern colonies. I'm going to use the map to point things out here. So New England, or NE, is up here. And it includes Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Some of its industries or economy was small farms. That's the yellow, is grain farms. And then you have lumber, the trees, fishing, the whale right here, and then trade is the ships. And these people came because mainly they wanted religious freedom. Now you have the middle colonies right here. That's going to include New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And you can see in terms of economy, they got some lumber going on here. They also have mining that's happening, especially in the mountains. The Appalachian Mountain range is right here. And then shipbuilding. You can see the ship right there. And then we have a diverse group of people and cultures living in this region. And think of New York City, right? Lots of people from all over the world would eventually come to these middle colonies. That made it a place where there was a lot more diversity, which a lot more tolerance. Then we have the southern colonies. And the southern colonies are going to include Virginia, Georgia, North and South Carolina. And cash crops come out of there. So that's a crop grown in large quantities and sold for profit. And that's what this yellow and this darker color are, which is probably tobacco and indigo farming and grain farming, which later would become cotton. And it's the warm weather that allowed for farming the cash crops. You could do it for a much longer season. And initially they relied on indentured servants, they being the few rich people that own the land. And eventually that indentured servants turned into enslaved labor. And we'll talk about that story and how that transition occurred. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I'm just going to sign off here.